And we are live. Hi, Janine. It is so
Hi.
good to see you. Sorry for the slightly later start. Technical issues that we still haven't figured out 3 years in. But it's lovely to have you here. For those of you who are joining us, we are talking about a very exciting topic today, which is dismantling a feminist. Can you help me with the title?
Yeah, so the title of my book is actually The Pink Tax, but it's Dismantling a Financial System Designed to Keep Women Broke.
Thank you. With my no internet, I have chicken scratch for writing and I couldn't get it correct. But I
Mm.
I am really excited to talk to you about this book. I saw you in Calgary 2 weeks ago for the WNORTH dinner, and we started talking about this conversation. And you were sharing a little bit about your journey as well with regards to writing this book. And that's where I kind of want to start. I've done these LinkedIn lives with other authors before, and I always am fascinated with the journey of writing a book and your particular journey in terms of deciding the topic that you wanted to dive into. What prompted you to write a book, this book, The Pink Tax, which is coming out next month?
Yeah, I think for me, I've been in the financial literacy space for about 12 years now. And at the beginning of my financial journey and trying to learn all these financial things myself, it really felt like it was just a bunch of old white guys telling everybody that they needed to, not buy avocado toast or skip the latte and just, don't impulse spend at the mall. And that is part of it. Don't get me wrong. Like, we all need to be mindful of what we're spending our money on and make sure that it's adding value to our life. But I just felt that there was this piece that was missing around what was actually happening from kind of a political and a global lens when it comes to the systems that we've set up in our society and how women have been disadvantaged to build wealth ultimately within those systems. So I really wanted it to be not just like how to build a budget or how to start investing, although there are some of those tips and tricks within the book. I really wanted it to also kind of have that macroeconomic feel of, what can we do from a city, a country, a corporation's perspective to start to make things more equal for women.
Oh, I love that. And I love the inspiration behind creating that systemic change, right? It's not just about our generation, it's about the next generation that's coming behind us. And actually calling out some of the findings. So on that note, what are some of the biggest findings and the biggest shocks that you found from writing this book that you were like, wow, what those wow moments?
Yeah, I mean, the list is long for sure. I think I was cursing quite a bit while I was researching the book. I think one of the ones that really stuck out for me was when we look at the wealth gap. White women actually only hold 30% of the wealth for every dollar that a man holds. And when we start to look at intersectionality, and what I hate about where we're at in our society right now is there's not a ton of data when it comes to like intersectionality in terms of different races, different like LGBTQ groups. There, we have not collected that data. But when we look at Black women, for example, they have just 2 cents of wealth for every dollar that a white man has. So that was a really surprising statistic that it was very sad to learn that. But that one really stuck out to me as one that kind of shook my world. I would also say that when we start to look at, especially North America, when it comes to maternity leave, we don't actually, I know Canada has like up to 18 months protected, but I don't think we've done enough in terms of compensating women while they're on leave. And if you look at the US, obviously, they're one of 3 countries in the world that doesn't have any paid protected leave. So I think that those were also some statistics I came across that were really maddening in a sense.
You touched on something that I'm really passionate about, and you and I had a conversation about, which is daycare and
Yeah.
the child care. And, we have made great strides in the country, in Canada, at least in the last little while. And I personally have seen my daycare go from probably over $2,600 for 2 children, down to $550 for one child full time, which is, a huge drop, which I'm grateful for and I'm thankful for. But it is still an issue for many people across the board to make the decision of well, first of all, if you can get the daycare.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the decision as to the cost of daycare, the cost of childcare or a nanny versus what the woman is getting paid. And very often, their women are, if they're at a certain bracket, it is not beneficial for them to go back to work. So what did you learn in that process around, women who are coming back into the workforce and what it means for the workforce and women?
Yeah. So women in the workforce is a very interesting piece of it. And I actually want to go back to what you were saying around comparing the woman's salary to childcare. And I think I do mention this in the book, but I think that's something we actually have to be really careful about, not making it just the woman's salary.
Okay.
That
Thank
is
you for calling that out.
because I mean, it's not like you come into the kitchen and you go, okay, well, you own the kitchen in our household and I own the living room, so we're only allowed in our designated rooms. If you have a spouse, most couples would kind of either join their finances or do kind of like a representation of the prorated amount. So if you have women typically earn less. So if women have 30% of the income in the household, then they technically are really only responsible for 30% of the daycare bill. So when we put all of the, I guess, onus on a woman's salary to be going towards childcare, that kind of further perpetuates the systems that we've built around women's money only being used for childcare or things that aren't necessarily as important, like summer camps or piano lessons. Oh, it's the mom's income that goes towards that, as opposed to, well, the dad's income goes towards the heating bill and the mortgage. So I think we need to be careful around that when we talk about childcare. But
yeah,
I definitely agree with you that we still have so much work to do when it comes to affordable, accessible childcare, because once we start to see the affordability, I guess, be better, we start to see accessibility go down. So that it has to be on both fronts. We have to create more spaces and more daycares that are flexible in terms of times and availability, because we have shift workers as well. Not everyone works 9 to 5. But then, the cost really needs to continue to go down, in my opinion, because we're not where we need to be in Canada.
No, 100%. And I really love what you acknowledged about, how we reframe the narrative of how we talk about, where that money is coming from. Because that is so important in terms of context, and also, we need to look at things from a bigger picture as women making those decisions. What does that long-term cost of removing ourselves from the workforce look like? And, what kind of implications will that have on our salary down the line? Let's talk a little bit about, salary and the wage gap for a minute, because I know have a lot of data on. Share some of the findings that you had with regards to the wage gap.
Yeah, and I think when we look at any gap, there is multi-facets when it comes to it. So everything in the world is not binary. Things are not black and white. There's so many things that implicate this. So I think when we start, there is definitely a bias towards hiring. Typically people hire who looks like them or who acts like them or who run in the same social circles as them. So there is that bias there right from the beginning. But when we look at the wage gap, a lot of people say, well, it's illegal to pay people differently. And that's true in some jurisdictions. I would argue that you probably need a large legal team to be able to actually fight that. So whether or not that shows up in court is a different story. But when we start to look at kind of the facets of the wage gap, we see things like women are looked over for promotions when they're at childbearing ages. Especially, I was looked over for a promotion 3 times after I had a kid, coming back from my maternity leave, and missed out on, like promotion cycles because I was on that mat leave. So it's things like that that start to compound the wage gap. And then we also see industries that women are heavily dominated in tend to actually see lower wages. So we saw this with school teachers. We saw men predominantly as school teachers and highly respected, paid well. And then when we started to see an influx of women, we saw the pay actually go down. And the opposite is true for software engineers. We saw women actually were the first software engineers. And then as we saw an influx of men into those careers, we saw the prestige go up and we saw the pay go up, frankly. And then more recently, even there's been research around pediatrics. So women are have been more likely to start going into pediatrics. And those are some of the lowest paid doctors in our country. So the wage gap is so sinister in the sense that it's so multi-layered and so multifaceted. And there's not just one thing. It's kind of all of the systems having an impact on us. But I think those are some of the things that we need to be aware of for sure.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit about the book's coming out next month.
It is. Yeah. Under a month. Oh my God.
Under a month. What date?
May 4th.
Okay, May 4th. So what are some of the things that you're really focusing on, driving awareness with this book? Is there anything, we've talked about some of the key issues, but is there anything else that you really want to drive awareness to?
Yeah, I think from a personal level, there are things women can do in terms of kind of owning their financial power. So building their wealth through investing and negotiating. I think those are two of the biggest skills women can continue to work on individually to build their wealth. So, creating more income and then ultimately investing that to build wealth and to build power and ultimately change, right? So if I'm investing in small businesses, not just through buying products, but maybe I'm an angel investor, I might choose that I only want to invest in women-run businesses. We know women businesses are underfunded from VCs, so that could be an opportunity for me, let's say, if I have that financial stability to go ahead and do that. So I think there are things that we can do from an individual level. I think as managers and as people that are in companies, we have a responsibility, and I hope people take this from the book, to advocate for policy change within our organizations. So if that means more paid maternity or parental leave, even having conversations with men around not asking them if they're taking parental leave, but how long are they taking? So kind of making it an obvious item that all men take parental leave, because then, we start to close the bias. And then ultimately, I think there is something to be said for how we show up in this world, who we vote for, what policies are we're advocating for, and who we elect into those decisions those positions that get to make decisions worldwide. And I know that can feel daunting, but I hope that people walk away with the fact that, even just small incremental changes, and we really don't have to look very far to see some of these great examples around our world, are going to help us support women to be economically equal. And, once we're economically equal, I think we'll create a more empathetic world, because we're going to be more likely to have more diverse voices at the table because we know what it's like.
100%. And you touched on something a little earlier, which I wanted to dive into, because on your Instagram, you are often sharing ways that you invest. And I know that you have some really cool startups that you like, tools that you use. So I wonder if you can share some of those with us today.
Yeah, for sure. So I think when it comes to investing, literally the best thing you can do is start now. Like, you don't even have to have more than $25. If you're watching this and thinking like, oh my God, I need to have $100,000 to start investing, not the case. You can do self-directed, which I'm a big fan of. There are lots of low-cost robo-advisors and ETFs out there that I think are great opportunities for people. You don't need a financial advisor. And I think it does come down to kind of having that beginner's mindset and looking to continually learn, because I want, everyone to always know that we're not taught this stuff in school. Like, I have a CPA designation and I was not taught how to invest at any point in my designation. I know how to run a business, but I didn't know how to invest for myself and grow my wealth. That was something that I was self-taught, and I ultimately turned those learnings into a course, which I offer, called the Wealth Lab. And it really walks you through kind of everything from the beginning to all the way through to making your first trade from a self-directed perspective. But there's lots of great books and tools out there where you can learn how to do it yourself, or use a robo-advisor to help you just start building the habit and just start as soon as you can. So even if it's $25 a month, that is like the best investment you can make in your future, because that 25 might turn into 50 one day. And then who knows, you might be contributing hundreds of dollars every month and building your wealth faster than you kind of ever thought possible.
I love that. And one of the things I wanted to touch on, because I know you have some advice in this area as well, is, you know, a lot of women and men across Canada are either in real estate or trying to get into real estate. And if you're not into the real estate game, it's very difficult right now. And so I was wondering if we could take a minute to talk about that and how, you know, if somebody who's watching is not currently invested in real estate and is maybe having a hard time getting into the real estate game, do you have any suggestions?
So I'm not a huge fan of having all of your investments in one asset class. So like real estate, for example, might be one, or just like I wouldn't put all my money in the shares of Apple, for example, because I think that there can be fluctuations. That being said, I totally understand how challenging it is in the market right now. I don't know what these house prices are, but hopefully they come down. So I think that there's a couple of ways people can actually look to get into the real estate market that is maybe less, because what I typically see is people save up a down payment and then they put all of their wealth into their house and then they have nothing left. And that's really problematic if something goes wrong in the house or something goes wrong financially. So I always advocate that not all of your wealth goes into one asset. That being said, there are REITs, so real estate investment trusts, that are ETFs you can purchase through a brokerage like Questrade, for example. But there's also companies that are coming out that offer like kind of fractional ownership in buildings. So Addy is one out of Vancouver that is quite well known around Canada. And again, you can start with $25. So the way I see that is like a great, easy way to put a little bit of money into real estate, maybe turn that into your down payment down the road, while still investing in building your wealth in the traditional stock market, for example, so that you're exposed to all different asset classes. So there are a couple of ways that I think makes it more accessible, as opposed to just, you know, saving up $100,000 and then just putting it all into one house or one investment property.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. And one of the I watched one. I've maybe it's a link, not LinkedIn Live, but an Instagram Live or a video or reel or something you did recently, where you went into a drugstore and picked up, you know, the men's deodorant and the women's deodorant and the men's shaver and the women's shaver, and you were comparing prices. And so, are we still there? Like, are we still at this place that we pay more for everything? Like, what are some of the examples of things you found?
Yeah, so that was just at the Shoppers down the way from my place. And what we see is the women's product is typically more expensive, or they're the same price and the volume is lower for the women's product. And we see this. I have an eye out for it. I have a 2-year-old, so my eye, when we're at Toys R Us or whatever, Bye Bye Baby, and you're looking at toys, the blue versus the pink branding, even within kids' toys can be more expensive for pink things. And what we've seen, actually, when I was researching the book, the figure was around 80,000, but with California passing the bill that does not allow kind of the pink tax to occur, the research they were basing this off of was worse, I guess, than my research. So an updated study shows that we spend actually up to $188,000 more over the course of our lifetime on women products that are more expensive for women. So, that can be things like clothing. That can be things like there was a study done where when you go to a car dealership, women are offered a price that is on average, this was in like 1995, but on average more than $200 more for white women and $400 more for Black women. And so if we fast forward and look at what that might be in today's dollars, it's more than double. So, it's everywhere. It's in all of the things that we do. It's in, women have less access to credit, for example, because they have less money. So what does that mean? Well, that probably means their credit score is lower, which means that the interest rate on their mortgage is going to be higher, right? So it's all of the things that make it just so much more expensive to be a woman. And again, these are only the things that people are measuring. I'm certain that there's absolutely more examples in our everyday lives.
And you brought up a good point, which is, the example of the car dealership. I think there's something that women are, I guess I shouldn't say that all women, but we traditionally have had a harder time negotiating, especially when
Mhm.
don't fully understand. So I think it's about educating yourself and doing the research. And we even actually, this came up last night at our WNORTH Journey to C-Suite that we did in Vancouver. Women, before we go into every conversation, we need to be 3 times as prepared for whether it's a negotiation, whether it's a conversation at the board table. And I think one of the things that I'm sort of realizing is that we can prepare ourselves better by going into these conversations with all the information and willing and being determined to negotiate on price, to definitely get to the bottom of why we're getting charged more at the car dealership than maybe somebody else. I like to hope that posted rates that we do now, like have consistency, but still it happens all the time. I have had that experience at a car dealership, so I know exactly.
Had the experience too. And, they're talking to my husband and I'm like, yeah, I'm probably the one that's making the decision at the end of the day, but it won't be your car dealership if you're not even going to pay attention to me. But I think so often it's just the way we've all been conditioned within our society to, I guess, just accept some of these things. There's also obviously a lot of negative stereotypes against women for negotiating and being perceived as bossy and maybe other B words that I know I've been called for speaking my mind. And there's, white middle-aged men have a special kind of confidence that maybe is not always necessary in every situation. But, I think that sometimes degrades some of our confidence. So there is also something to be said for the allyship work that men can do in these situations.
Right. No, I appreciate that. And I think that I'm first of all, I want to thank you for writing this book and for bringing attention to a topic that, I'll be honest, I feel is completely underwritten about, and needed, like you said at the beginning, needed a 2023 facelift. I remember reading the books of, I can't even remember, I bet they're on one of these shelves, The Wealthy Barber, or
I've read them all. Yeah. Smart Women Finish Rich by David Locke. Like that was the second personal finance book I read.
And, there are good, lessons to be discussed in those books, but they were 20, 30 years ago and it needed a facelift. So thank you for that. And for sort of wrapping up, I want you to plug the book and your course. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So the book, The Pink Tax, comes out on May 4th, and it will be available online kind of wherever books are sold, as well as some local bookshops in cities across Canada. You can sign up to be the first to know about it at pinktaxbook.com, and there'll be an email sent out as soon as it's available. We're just kind of waiting on Amazon and all those Barnes & Noble to approve the files. So I'm so excited for that. We'll also be hosting some launch parties across Canada. So an email will be going out around that as well. It's all over my social media. And then the course, the Wealth Lab, teaches women how to profitably and sustainably invest so that they can ultimately build their wealth. And in my mind, that is the perfect way to, reduce stress and have the life that you actually want to live because you have the financial resources to do so. So that information can be found at thewealthbuildingacademy.com.
Awesome. Fantastic. And I want to also put a plug in for local bookshops. So I live in a smaller town, not small town, but Whistler. We have Armchair Books. And when they don't have the book, I can special order it through the book.
A lot of bookstores can do that if you ask them. So I'm trying to reach out to as many as I can, but obviously I'm just one person. So if you know a local bookshop that you want to carry this book, please, I would rather that people buy it through a local bookshop than other corporations.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Janine. Thank you so much for your time today. And good book launch. I will probably see you in the next month. So,
thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.